such that the port had the ability to recover this also from the agent. And it was considered unfair as to why should the port agent be liable, because the importer never came to purchase this cargo. Usually it was for low material, low value cargo, which just ended up occupying a lot of space. And agents had their neck on the line for cases that have dragged on for more than 20 years. Even their future business was also at risk, because you don't know when the port would suddenly come down on you or stop another vessel of yours coming in.
Yeah.
So this has given some welcome relief, but mostly for the older cases. It's not that much of a problem anymore.
But
is there a date from which, sorry to interrupt you, is there a date from which this new 75 days cap comes into play?
No, it is with retrospective effect. Even for the old ones, I think the agents are entitled to take back the money, and for the 76th day onwards, the port is now allowed to proceed against the cargo interests. They have to return the money if they've already collected it.
Right.
But question one, Shankar, was that, I mean, now that this judgment has come, and of course it's for old cargoes, but it's very much, I mean, some part of this judgment can be used going forward when, you know, cargoes which are coming in now and are getting abandoned or are not getting auctioned and not getting cleared. Even going forward, a similar situation will apply, right? 75 days, because it's a...
It is. How common a problem is it even today? This is the relevant paragraph.
Very, very, very common even today.
Okay.
I mean, okay, there's a little difference. When you look at container shipping, it's slightly different. When you look at break bulk, it's very much applicable as far as this is concerned. And there is quite a large amount of cargo which yet comes in and gets abandoned and not cleared. So there is a problem, which is ongoing as far as this is concerned. But then this can also be used for containerized cargo, when you go off into places where the port is actually storing the containers in the port and it's not moving to CFSs, which is, like off dock, it's not moving off dock. This can yet possibly even be applied in those cases going forward, is it not?
Yes, correct. Okay. This is the relevant paragraph 83.
The ratio will come in future judgments also, because you will have different combinations. You'll have ICDs, you'll have CFS. The entities will be different, but I think the ratio, they'll be able to hold it constant. Hopefully, but it needs to be seen how they, rule on it later on. This would have been for the BPT break bulk days.
Yeah, this is actually Cochin Port Trust. Na? This was against the Arabian Cochin Port Trust.
So I guess the same ratio should apply. They can't change the ratio.
They can't. This is a central act and it applies to all ports equally.
Will it apply to CFSs and ICDs is a question.
So whether the CFS will have the power to collect?
No, whether, as let's say as a carrier, I, after 75 days, am not responsible to pay the CFS anything. It will, because today the CFS even comes after me as a carrier.
So unless it appears in some other contract, but otherwise, this is a right available only to major ports, and CFS doesn't get that benefit.
Okay.
When I said Anand ratio, probably if it is litigated again, this would become a case in point as a presentation that the same ratio comes, but it needs to get litigated and closed.
True.
You would not get it suo moto.
I agree.
You won't get it suo moto. Antanu is very quiet. How come?
I want to suggest, Arun.
Sure.
I think our questions are well worded. So if they stay on screen, it will be good for both panelists and participants.
Right, sir. So I can put that.
Because on side panel, we can see the panelists.
I can do that.
First question, we have given various sub-questions in that.
True.
So any panelist who wants to reply, otherwise what will happen is we will have to take rounds of sub-questions. So
right.
I would rather prefer every person gives his view in totality so that he can speak uninterrupted on the entire issue.
Right, sir.
But Shantanu, it will be very difficult if you look at point one. Point one has basically a large number of questions, okay? So if you are actually, each panelist is going to cover the whole of point one, and then another one speaks, and then a third one, and then, you know, you go on in that manner, it might really not be. I think if you can break down.
I don't mind break up. It will be, in fact, for you, there will be a break of flow. Like person like me, if I take a topic, I will go full stream. But if everyone prefers we break up into sub question, I am okay with it.
Because
we have 5 minutes to go, and I've just checked all the technical stuff, so I think we are good to go.
Broken up question or handle the whole topic totally.
See, basically, Shantanu, I would recommend that the main perspective be given by the insurer, followed by the legal person, and we come into places where the commercial element is there. So legal element, unless we have a specific instance.
Shailesh, even legally we may have a different experience.
Yeah. Unless we have a specific instance and something to contribute, it will be substantially between Victoria and Ashwin.
You are referring to the sequence. I am referring whether first question has 4 plus, I think,
4 plus 5.
4 plus 5 means actually there are many sub questions in the first discussion point. It's more than 5.
So Shantanu, if you ask me, you know, when you're looking at this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we should address 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individually and not common, because they are not consistent.
And line take legal action against freight forwarder. Demand means there are more than 5.
No, I'm saying the 1 to 5, the first 4 point bullet points are different. I'm saying 1 to 5 when you go to page 2 of point 1.
Yeah.
That you need to, I mean, page 1 and page 2 is overlapping in some extent, but page 2, I think, because if you look, you know, we spoke about this court judgment. We are speaking about lien on cargo. We are speaking about nominations and import freight forwarders. These are different points per se, I would think. I mean, up to you. You're the moderator. You decide.
I think convenience of panelists is more important. For me, I have to throw ball in your court.
I actually think some of the questions, although they seem very different, the answer tends to overlap a bit. So I think to go through each point individually, you might end up repeating yourself to some extent. I mean, one of the overriding, in my view, responses to a lot of these questions is, are we liable? It's like, well, what capacity did you act in, and what contract is governing that capacity? And really, they're the documents you need to be looking at, because that's where the answers are. And that tends to be the same general answer to most of these points, I think. So I think there's a bit of overlap. I would say, one of the questions I think on the first slide was, what can you do to mitigate things? That's slightly different perhaps, although again, it's leading into this issue of your contractual terms and how have you prepared these, and are they back to back, and that sort of thing.
So Victoria, all together or broken up?
I'm inclined to maybe, I mean, certainly some of the technicalities, I don't think I would be the best person to answer, but I'm happy to cover a lot of these points to the best of my ability, and then maybe pass on to Ashwin, and he maybe contradicts me or puts a bit more legal bump, you know, supporting some of the things I've said or providing some clarity. Because a lot of the questions as well, it depends on where you're talking about. You know, maybe the freight forwarder is in India. That doesn't necessarily mean that's where the cargo's been abandoned. So there's quite a lot of ifs and buts, and I don't think any of these questions are going to have a straightforward answer per se. But you know, we just need to see all of these circumstances.
So would you prefer at once or one by one? How would you prefer? All at once or one by one?
A lot of people are waiting.
No problem. We still have a couple of minutes. My suggestion,
Exactly 2 minutes.
I'll put the first slide, and then the second part of the first slide is already with you. You can just start debating on that, and then I'll put the third slide, the second point.
Yeah.
So that would be a good option because there are some questions which are overlapping.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So we have precisely 2 minutes to go, I guess.
I think it'll be interesting if
1
we
minute.
have differing views. So if I say something, it'll be good if somebody gives the other perspective, and you have a mature audience, so they will get the best of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when each one is going to speak, Shantanu, you know what's going to happen? There is going to be some amount of duplication which is going to happen.
Yeah.
There is bound to be, because if all of us are going to talk on the same point, you know, it's very much possible that I might say something which you and possibly Victoria would agree, maybe Sailesh and Shankar would not, but it's bound to happen on something
Yeah.
else, somebody else will agree. So, but
Don't duplicate in an uninteresting or boring manner, even if you want an interesting game.
So we are good to go. So I'm going to be switching to the webinar right now.
Go in rotation. First question, I think I will start with Ashwin, and then we will start with Anand later on, and then
So we are on time.
yeah, ready.
We're going. I think we are connected. Priya, can you please confirm?
Yes, we are connected because I can see participants.
Yeah.
Right. So I will initiate the proceedings of today. Ladies and gentlemen.
Number is rising very fast, so hold on for a minute.
Okay.
Number is rising very rapidly.
Yeah, because all of them were waiting.
Yeah, yeah.
So we give it 5 minutes.
2 minutes.
Less than a minute, we have crossed 200. So
we give it a couple of minutes before we start.
yeah, now you can start actually.
Shall I start, sir?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the introduction. So, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Association of Multimodal Transport Operators of India, also known as AMTOI, I welcome you all to this webinar. I believe we have over 600 registrations as of a few minutes back for this event, and look forward to having a most interesting and enlightening session today. It's my privilege to introduce the very eminent panel we have today. We welcome Ms. Victoria Simpson, who is the leading underwriting MTO and freight forwarders liability risk and for over 20 years. She is the head of underwriting at Atlas, which specializes in liability insurance of MTOs and freight forwarders. We are also pleased to welcome Mr. Ashwin Shankar, who is a graduate from prestigious National Law Schools, Bangalore, and did his LLM in Maritime Law from UK. He is a partner of the Chamber of George A. Robello, which is the world's leading shipping and international trade law firm. Besides the two guests on the panel, we have the privilege of having two of our past presidents, Mr. Sailesh Bhatia and Mr. Anand Seth, along with our incumbent president, Mr. Shantanu Bhatkamkar, with three stalwarts of AMTOI who need no introduction. Before we begin the session, allow me to introduce Ms. Priya Thomas, who is the co-convener of Northern Region for AMTOI and is going to help me with the smooth functioning of this webinar. My name is Arun Kumar and I'm your host for the evening. A quick introduction to the format of the webinar. We'll have three sessions. Each session will be followed up by a Q&A, wherein we'll try to take as many questions as possible within the time available, that is. Taking only the questions which come in Q&A. By that I mean, please do not post your question in the chat because it's very difficult to, compile from two sides. So please put your questions in the Q&A. We'll definitely try to take them up. A lot of questions which were asked at the time of registration have already been compiled and has been shared with the panelists. So we'll probably have the answers during the discussion. But still, if you have any questions, please go ahead and post it in Q&A. With this, I would like to hand over the floor to our president, who will moderate the session also. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, members, and also welcome the panelists. We have guest panelists from UK and Goa, and we have our own Anand Seth and Shailesh Bhatia, who are both past presidents. The idea is to have diversity of views. We tried it once when we had again a settlement, one lawyer and Vishal. In fact, Vishal is Ashwin's colleague. We had Vishal and we had one settlement consultant, claim settlement consultant from Singapore. And that format was appreciated by everyone, that everybody has a different life experience. So we give different views. In fact, panel discussion format evolved in 1920 when radio started and radio started to have discussions. So webinar following the same format is only natural. It avoids boring, monotonous talk, and the response we got was outstanding. The benefit you get as a participant is, instead of a single answer, diversity of views enables you to understand the topic deeper. And understanding it deeper is always better than being under a misunderstanding by having one singular opinion, and then I would say you are not well prepared for other possibilities. The topics have been identified essentially by what members have sent us as queries, and we will have a very lively discussion. I would request you not to multitask. This is an issue of livelihood. This is an issue of great importance to protect ourselves. And in case of eventuality, how do we risk mitigate? How do we mitigate our risk? So please pay full attention. And thanks for participation. I think we had record almost 600 registrations, and I can see more than 350 participants have already joined. So this is essentially such big participation that encourages us to have more and more programs, and you will have more such in time to come. So with this, Arun, will you please load our first question? It is a nightmare for a freight forwarder when the consignee abandons the cargo, and the cargo is beyond our country's jurisdiction. It is lying somewhere else, and our destination agent is also helpless because the consignee refuses to take delivery. In which case, we have to deal with multitude of issues, and this one issue we can see has so many dimensions, and problem is always multidimensional. We had a small chat amongst panelists, and one thing we all agreed is the outcome can be multitude, each case can be different, and essentially all these issues are multidimensional. To touch each issue can be a session in itself. And actually we are not going to have sessions, we are going uninterrupted. These are going to be 3 questions we will handle during this session. So in case of abandoned cargo, the most important issue is whether shipping line can take action against the freight forwarder. Now, freight forwarder can be someone who is just a booking agent. He may or may not get brokerage, or a freight forwarder can be someone who is the shipper on the shipping line's bill of lading, and he issues the bill of lading to the exporter. So essentially the freight forwarder here is a contracting carrier, and his relationship with the shipper is principal to principal, and shipping line is his contractor or vendor. So what are the liabilities in both these cases? then how does the freight forwarder protect himself in either of the cases? Then how does freight forwarder makes the shipper or consignee liable to fulfill its obligation by either taking delivery of cargo or compensating for the detention charges and ground rent and other charges that are incurred. With this, we open the floor for the panelists, starting with Ashwin, then we will have Victoria, then Shailesh, and then Anand will both sum up and give his comments. So, Ashwin, please get going. And whenever you want, we can open the second page also, or we can go to second page later on.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me over. Let's start discussing with the primary issue is what happens when there's an abandoned cargo. Are you as a freight forwarder exposed to a liability from the main line? From this main line is essentially for the container detention cost largely. What kind of risks are there? The answers are really two. First, the bad. I think yes, you are exposed to this if you are a contractual counterpart, which means if you were just a freight broker, you would not be. But if there's a house bill of lading and a master bill of lading, and you appear as a shipper in the master bill of lading, then you will be liable. That's the first part of the bad news. The good news is, I don't think you will be liable to the extent of the rates that are mentioned on the terms and conditions of the main line. The main line contains for fairly high rates, and those rates continue to escalate with the passage of in blocks of weeks or months. Though that is agreed upon in the contract or in your booking note, which stands reflected in your bill of lading, I think in reality, only actual damages can be awarded. Now, the actual damages, so not what is referred to as the liquidated damages or what you call as the container detention charges, and at least under Indian law, unlike under English law, even though you may have agreed at a particular rate, that rate is not binding upon you. You can reopen that rate, and it is actually only an upper cap of your liability. So if a container, for example, costs rental, whatever the market value for that container is, that is the maximum, which in my opinion is what a freight forwarder will be liable for, which is far lesser than what the owners are claiming for.
Ashwin, before I go to Victoria, I have a query on this. In FIATA advisory body on legal matters, heard that there was a case in UK, and I believe in Singapore also, which has very categorically held that the convention and the bill of lading refers to merchant, and the court held that it is with knowledge that the shipper on their bill of lading is a freight forwarder, the shipping line is accepting the cargo. So having knowledge that the person mentioned that shipper is not the merchant, shipping line has accepted this transaction. So they can't hold the freight forwarder responsible even if we have raised the we have issued our own bill of lading and I am the shipper. And second sub question over here is now shipping lines have started practice of putting our name as a booking agent on the bill of lading. And they say that our contract is with you, though the owner may be different, the carrier, but my contract is with you, so we hold you responsible. So these are two extreme views. So can you throw light on these two extreme views?
So one is by putting your name as a booking agent, but not as a shipper or consignee. I don't think you will be the party to this or liable for any container detention cost. Okay, that's because you're just there for a broker or a middleman on this, but without any contractual privity. So that I think is not going to be good enough for the mainline to recover from you. The second argument also, or the first argument which we made also is a good point, saying that of course we are not merchant. So even though because we're being called as a merchant, but I feel that on that we are on a. I mean, it's a good point, but I think the mainline will have a better argument because that part of the contract will have to be honored when we take on liabilities. Otherwise, they can't go directly against the actual shipper or the actual receiver for want of brevity of contract. So I think we will be liable, but you can reduce the quantum.
I think one more thing before again I go to Victoria. There was also an attempt by one shipping line to change the term from merchant to anybody who is a shipper. But the conventions like Hague, Visby and all, the conventions referred to merchant, and that's why a lot of people, particularly in Europe, objected to it and took it forward, and that issue was laid at rest and nobody followed the So probably it is little more serious than lines brushing us away on that issue.
Certainly, I agree with you. The word merchant I have not seen on Hague or Hague-Visby rules. It appears in the back of bills of lading, while widely defining the number of people who they can rope in to extract their outstandings from. So that's a business call. It said, so while I do think that there will be a liability upon a freight forwarder if he is named as a shipper or a consignee on a bill of lading, but I don't think, as I mentioned earlier, the amount will be as contained in the booking note.
Victoria, your views?
Yeah, well, I mean, the headline question was, is as a freight forwarder, can you be liable? And I think the bad news is the answer is probably yes. I think one of the key issues that you've really raised is there's quite often a disparity between the master bill of lading and then the house bill of lading or MTD that a freight forwarder is issuing. So I've looked at some carrier bills of lading, and like you're saying, they refer to merchant and the merchant as being responsible for everything. The merchant is quite often an all-encompassing definition. Actually, it includes sometimes parties that you might not necessarily think constitute being a merchant, but anyway, they're using that as a broad term to capture all and sundry. And within the carrier master bill of lading, there's quite often a clause that will say something along the lines of if the merchant, which obviously is all encompassing as we've just said, owes us any money, or we reserve the right to take a lien on the cargo, maybe even another cargo or another set of contracts. It doesn't matter if they're actually related, and we can do this at any time and in any place. Well, this is a huge exposure because perhaps as far as they're concerned, the shipper is the same freight forwarder on a number of shipments, but for the freight forwarder, the shipper isn't always going to be the same on their house bill of lading. And what you tend to see, or what I tend to see from my perspective when I'm vetting house bills and MTDs, is that the contractual terms are not back to back with the carrier bill of lading. So the freight forwarder doesn't have exactly the same rights in that respect. They're not using the term merchant very often. Sometimes they're only referring to a consignee. So you're now limiting who you can take action against as part of the recovery process. And I think this is one area that people need to be very careful of. You know, I always sort of say you've really got to know who you are and what you're doing. And I don't mean that in a, you know, profound kind of way, but I guess sometimes maybe bills and MTDs are thrown around so much. It's a part of your industry, but it's so critical what's contained on the reverse. And I think people would be minded to take a bit of time to compare their own set of trading conditions with those of the carriers that they're using or that they're customarily using for maybe some of their major trades.
Shailesh, before I move to Shailesh, Victoria, would you give some suggestions about how, if by changing a contract, or I think putting terms on bill of lading is very difficult, but at least the way we quote or enter into a contract with shipping line or with the shipper, can we protect ourselves better? Means fine, there will be always a chance, but can I do something better?
I mean, with this, obviously, people are going to have to take legal advice, and proper legal counsel will be able to guide you. But as a non-lawyer, my observation or immediate observation would be you just don't have the same rights as the carrier. Maybe you should, because while it might be incredibly frustrating if other cargoes are being held up on account of one particular shipment that's been abandoned, if maybe you've got the same shipper involved yourself under your house bill of lading, in most of the house bill of ladings and MTDs that I see, you don't have the same rights. So you can't lien another unrelated cargo, and leverage is probably what everyone needs in these sorts of circumstances, because sometimes it's just not economical to be taking legal action and that sort of thing. And sometimes you can't react as quickly as you would like in certain parts of the world, as I'm sure you're aware. You can't just turn around and get a cargo auctioned. You have to wait a prescribed amount of time. And in some places that can be quite long. That can be up to 6 months, depending on the type of cargo. So, you know, the quicker you can react, or the most leverage you can exercise has got to be in your interest.
Shailesh, you have to unmute.
Yeah, so I also concur that there could be a liability, though in Indian courts of law, I don't recollect any decision having been taken on this, that a forwarder is liable. Fortunately for us, it's not in a good way, but our legal system is very slow. So by the time a judgment comes, probably, unless it's a corporate structure or a large organization, most of the time the organizations have closed down also, especially in the smaller ones. And this kind of a situation arises more for the smaller importers. It doesn't arise for the larger importers as much as it is for the small guys. Considering what submission you made, what information you gave, Shantanu, about the merchant being treated not as the forwarder, but as the actual consignee or the importer, I guess we still do have a chance to litigate it in Indian courts of law and then wait for a final decision. But my advice to my fellow businessmen and freight forwarders would be that they should be wary of handling commodities which there is a tendency for it to be abandoned, especially like scrap, waste paper. There are certain commodities which there is a high tendency of the importer abandoning it because of either delay in getting the cargo or getting the clearance, whereby the detention damage has gone up, and then the value of the goods is not making it, worthwhile for that person to clear it. So one should be very wary of that. And I guess that would be the better way to handle this situation than to try to litigate it, because this delay of litigation is also negative to us. If you are standing tall after 20 or 30 years of litigation in India, the amount of liability is also going to be astronomical because of the delay, because the goods would not have got cleared for probably 5 and 10 years or more before it's auctioned. So the liability amount also increases. Other than India, it doesn't happen that the auction takes so much time. So, the plus and the minus both are available there in India. Over to you.
Yeah, I think you've raised a good point that, it's all very well having the right to take legal action, but the fact of the matter is, depending on what country's involved, it's going to come at a cost in terms of time and money, and is it going to be worth it? And like you said, I think a lot of cases tend to get resolved because basically you'll just have to pay something to make it go away and just move on and onto the next shipment. But can I ask a question? I know this is really for the AMTOI members to be learning, but I would quite like to know what types of, you mentioned that some cargoes tend to get abandoned more than others. could you give me a few examples for my own benefit, please?
I think you can answer that. Shailesh did mention some commodities, but answer this along with everything else.
So to answer your question, Victoria, is, you know, commodities like scrap, metal scrap, waste paper, you know, commodities like woolen rags or you know, woolen cloth rags, any kinds of rags,
Textiles.
any kind of textile rags, not actual textiles.
Yeah.
Or, you know, there are commodities which basically also, where there is a large amount of fluctuation in the market prices, then these are commodities also which are very susceptible to be abandoned over here, because between the time of purchase and the time of arrival over here, the market has dropped so much for that, you know, for that commodity, that people tend to abandon it. So these are commodities which Shailesh was mentioning. But before I add, you know, I have two questions for both, you know, Ashwin as well as you, Victoria. One, let me start with you, Victoria. You know, you mentioned about lien can be related or unrelated. That means the lien could be on the goods which are involved in the being abandoned, or it could be on other cargoes as well. But then that in different jurisdictions of the world, okay, there are different laws of lien, isn't it? So in, let's say, for example, in UK, the lien is general, so I can have lien on all the cargo of that particular, you know, let's say shipper or consignee or merchant, whatever term you want to use. But in another jurisdiction, let's say Germany, for example, it's the lien is only on that particular cargo which is getting abandoned. So how does the carrier, I mean, let's look at it, how does the shipping line in different jurisdictions, how are they of lien, how are they able to enforce that onto me?
Well, I guess it's, in theory, the master bill of lading that they're issuing should be, how can I phrase this, conducive to the ports at which they're calling at for your shipment. So if they're issuing a master bill of lading that says that they're allowed to do that, then you would imagine that that's not applying to a shipment going to, say, Germany. I would imagine that's the way that they get around it. They have slightly different versions depending on what part of the world or what routes are being governed by the master bill of lading. I have to say, that's just my sort of my thoughts. I don't know that for a fact, but I would imagine that's. I have to say, I'm quite surprised they're allowed to do that. You know, initially I was thinking that wouldn't be the case, and I was looking last night at a few carrier bills of lading, and I thought, no, everyone's got this, seems to have this same clause. So good for them that they have the leverage. But yeah, as I said, it's.
But aren't bill of lading conditions, you know, the terms and conditions of a bill of lading, aren't they governed by the convention or which you are using? So let's say Hague Visby or Hague or Hamburg or Rotterdam or the MTD, which we have as a multimodal transport operator, the terms and conditions would be governed by that, right?
Yeah, but then I guess there's always a law and jurisdiction clause on the bill of lading, and maybe that, perhaps Ashwin can answer this, maybe that gives people the right to have certain rights in some countries over others, or certain opportunities to leverage cargoes or lien cargoes compared to others. I mean, the matter is as well, and it's a little bit like we were discussing earlier, you're asking the question is, can this legally be done in a certain country? And I guess it might actually even boil down to the fact that if somebody has your cargo and you want it released, then you'll just do whatever it takes to get things moving quickly, and you might have to run with certain things to get things done and get the cargo where it needs to be to minimize your own exposure. Perhaps that means acting commercially, not just as a freight forwarder, but maybe the carrier's acting commercially as well, a little bit more than legally.
So that's where my question to Ashwin comes up. Ashwin mentioned something that, the liability of a freight forwarder when he is the contracting carrier and therefore the shipper on, let's say, the carrier's bill of lading, the shipping line's bill of lading. You said that the liability is not generally as per the terms and conditions mentioned on the carrier's bills of lading. So let's say that tariff in terms of detention or demurrage. And you said that, only actual damages can be awarded. Can you just amplify that? Because I'm sure a large number of our participants are very concerned about this point because a lot of us are, either a shipper or a consignee, but the carrier or the shipping line always is demanding the full tariff from us as mentioned on the bills of lading. So how do we counter that when you said that, our liability can be only actual damages?
We will come to this point. You can
Okay.
your views on previous point. I have noted that point. What is the regime under which? But you have some points. Please cover them.
So I'm in complete agreement. I concur with everyone who said this, that as a freight forwarder, when you are either a shipper or a consignee on the shipping line carrier's bills of lading, you are liable. There is no escaping that. As a booking party, you're not liable. I'm also very clear on that. And I've had cases of my own where carriers have come after me as when I'm just a booking party, and I've been able to legally fight them. And I've not paid a cent where I was just a booking party. But I've had cases also where I have been a consignee on that bills of lading and I've had to pay. Okay, so in both cases, I concur with everyone as far as that is concerned.
Ashwin, I think you can take all these three questions together. Number one is you say that this is the highest rate and it's not binding. Can you have a better, a detailed explanation so that we can argue on that lines? Second is, I have a live case actually where the forwarder who has sent cargo to me is a large forwarder of Europe. He books 1 million containers every year. So nobody wants to take a fight with him. So I am the destination agent. So the shipping line is after my blood. And I have been saying that it is not sold by me, but they every time withhold my cargo and we have to fight every time. And they say, no, we can't take up with them. They are a big customer. So whether as the receiving party am I liable just because the person on other side who has booked the cargo is stronger? And third point also, I want, it may have origins in colloquialism, but all old people in shipping used to say that it is cargo which bears the cost. It is neither shipper nor consignee. Yes, there is a title, there is ownership, but every cost that is incurred has to be borne by the cargo. So if it is borne by cargo, I would assume it has to be borne by the auction and all these proceedings. So whether it is colloquialism or there is some legal force in this argument. So all three, I think you can recollect the questions and answer together.
Okay, thank you. Now, first is a joke. As a lawyer, I'm going to start my billing clock. On the so first is I don't think the charge attaches only to the cargo. It is a contract, so it will attach to whoever the counterparts to the contractor, shipper, receiver, consignee, merchant, as you may call it. And also therefore, even if the liability exceeds the value of the cargo, then those people continue to be liable to it. Okay, I'll come to your second and third question, but from a point that Victoria had said, I'll take off from there. And it's a point that I think is very important for your industry. Two important points for your industry. One is, I think you have a large number of small-sized claims against shippers and receivers based out of interior India, who you often have to write off in the 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 15 lakhs because of the disproportionate amount of effort in trying to recover it, and of course the hesitation to go to court. I strongly advocate that the AMTOI sets up within its own bills of lading, the House bills of lading, in the law and jurisdiction clause, an India arbitration clause. Let it be administered by yourselves at a low cost, at a low system and a mechanical system where certain trusted office bearers sit as arbitrators, and they will hear both the trade as well as your member either myself or somebody else can handhold you on the system on how to go about it. The cost of it can be very small just to run the association and the time that you all are dedicating into this. We'll give you a format of how the claim must be. Normally it's for ground rent, detention, dangerous cargo, abandoned cargo, unpaid freight. Because what happens is the award that you issue or somebody will be issuing, either yourselves or you tie up with another body, is immediately enforceable. So what you can do for a small cost actually saves you what you would otherwise been avoiding for the fear of the cost and the time that you spend in court. So one recommendation is all your AMTOI members should be encouraged to have a single clause under which either AMTOI or somebody else will resolve your disputes internally, because you will understand your dispute and get to the answer of it really in 10 minutes. It's that simple, most of it is. And there's so much of money and so much of disputes to be recovered. So I think that is something without the need for lawyers and all to get involved into. Because I've seen the number of cases that you'll have had to write off. Okay. The third point which I have, and I'll come to your questions when you remind me, is there's a huge business opportunity in this entire abandoned cargo thing. So you know of the existence of abandoned cargo, you know who the traders are also for this cargo from your network of customers across India. There's a lot of business to make out of this. It does not necessarily have no value. You know the system, you know the trade. If you're willing to stick your neck out and get into this auction part of it also, there's a lot of money to be made in that also. Always remember, the maximum money is available to make when you're in the worst business system. Disorganized one is where you can actually do well, and there are opportunities in this. Shantanu, if you could give me your questions, I'll deal with the second and third one.
Yes, I think one question was, shipping lines sometimes get after us while we are the consignee on their bill of lading. It is booked in a foreign country, and because the forwarder over there is powerful, or sometimes he may be delinquent also, but in my case he is very powerful. So they are running after us that you bear all these costs. And I just said, I am not the booking agent. I am merely acting as his destination agent. They are insisting, no, you are the consignee here. And according to us, the consignee has to take the responsibility and not the shipper. Because you are not taking delivery. And wouldn't agree if I say it's the importer which is taking delivery. So that is one question. Then I will come to second.
No, I don't think you'll be liable for this. Their argument is essentially that your name is there as a merchant, and that's the basis. And because you are part of the merchant, you must be liable. First, you're not part of the original contract. The original contract is coming from the load port side. The alternate argument is that they may have, which I think will again fail, is because you are then purchasing or you're surrendering the original bill of lading. The rights and liabilities under the bill of lading get transferred to you. That also I think is wrong, because under Indian law they get transferred to you, provided also at the same time the ownership over the cargo also is getting transferred to you. And that second condition never happens, because in your case your ownership of cargo does not get transferred to you. So therefore no liabilities or get transferred to you. So I don't think as a receiver at the discharge port, freight forwarder can be liable for a debt owed by the load port freight forwarder.
I think before I come to third question, I will like to have clarity on the suggestion which you have given. It's an invaluable suggestion. And for your information and more so for our members' information, 7 associations in Exim Logistics have set up what we call as Grievance Redressal Forum, and it was launched by Secretary Shipping. So there is kind of government endorsement for this initiative, though not official. And we are working on SRO, in which conciliation would be an integral part of it, and it will be a structured kind of conciliation proceeding. We have given a proposal to government. In fact, we have sent all these papers to Vishal, but because of lockdown, we couldn't pursue. But I think we will copy it to you also. Particularly, Anand, this particular point, let us share with him. But there, my question is, our bill of lading format is part of rules. Now, rules is a subsidiary legislation, so we can't change anything in that except our name and logo. They don't allow us to modify it a bit also. Even the spacing and all, they are so strict about it.
My
question is, can we make it a part of our quotation and then make it a contractual obligation? May not be in the bill of lading, but a quotation.
Yes, it can be done. It will then be binding only upon the person you have the quotation with. That will not get transferred, number one. Number two, I agree with what you're saying about this difficulty of inability to change the wordings. I think it's silly. I think the DG is the one who's prescribed these wordings. I have seen bills of lading where the jurisdiction clause, because I look at that unfortunately first, the right at the end, where it says law and jurisdiction of blank, and it's still kept as blank because you thought that, I think the DG who drafted thought you're going to put it in, but then somebody said that you can't change a dot and a comma, so you were not able to fill up this blank, but this continues to remain as a blank, which is absurd. So either the DG has to be told that this flexibility must be allowed, or otherwise we do it in a separate document, but I would recommend that AMTOI handles it. This dispute grievance cell and mediation, all that is fine, but does not have any force of law, will not help you recover your money. It must be a clear arbitration word. You can handle it yourself without cost and external lawyers.
That's true. I think the remaining question was, you made a very important comment that the rate of detention, ground rate, they are the highest they can charge, and not necessarily we are obliged to pay that much amount. So can you cite, because I know there are some British court judgments also in favor of for Bangladesh shipments, limiting to value of goods, limiting to value of container, and some other cases, a different kind of ratio has been applied. But can you share what logic or what basis you have to defend it?
So basically, it's a concept known as liquidated damages, where you pre-agree upon what the loss will be in case the container stays for a longer amount of time. Unlike English law, but under Indian law, we have section 74 of the Indian Contract Act. Under that, it deals with liquidated damages, and it says exactly what I said, is that what that number is only the upper limit of liability, but still the court must only allow reasonable damages or reasonable compensation. Now, reasonable compensation means the loss that they have suffered, which is the same as market rate for the rental for a container B. So the answer lies under section 74 of the Indian Contract Act.
Since you referred to Contract Act, maybe somewhat stupid question. Does frustration of contract also sip in when cargo gets abandoned or not delivered or not collected at destination?
No, I think your rights will still continue. The contract doesn't get frustrated. You will still need to perform, sue, defend, what would be there.
Okay. Comments on this issue before we move to next step? Any other comments from anyone on this, or we will move to the next page?
I'm also seeing a lot of questions and comments coming in.
Yeah.
How you
But we will first complete our agenda, or Arun, you want to interrupt and give some questions?
Sir, we have another 4 minutes. You can discuss this, and then we should go to the questions, because we have a lot of questions on this particular topic itself.
No, but go to the second page. You are going to load the second page. What is the liability in case consignee? That is the repetition, I believe.
Right, sir.
Only what is not repeated, who has lien on cargo in case of abandoned cargo. I think each country has a different legislation. In India, it is, I think, given in Custom Act, but that's a custom perspective. But auction is done usually by the custodian. Is that right?
Yeah, so the carrier will continue to have a lien on the cargo, regardless of whether it's abandoned or not. And then you need to take steps to auction it. There's another big opportunities because carriers are so hesitant to deal with these abandoned cargoes. There's a big opportunity which you can on the ground provide them assistance in getting rid of their cargoes.
In fact, Ashwin, for last 20 years, we have been suggesting to the government, like America has general order warehouses, and they mitigate this problem considerably. And goods will be auctioned after 30 days unless we go and make payment. So the role of the merchant becomes very active over there, or they are just auction, and fresh goods always fetch better valuation. So maybe we will discuss with you on pursuing this also, because we have been putting it repeatedly that have a general order warehouse where there is a business opportunity for someone. Then
Online portal or something you set up.
Sorry.
Another thing is AMTOI has an online portal which is running auctions or through MSTC or somebody else you tie up. There's a lot y'all can do with it because there's such a huge volume of abandoned cargo of different types. Surveyors get it, clear it. Lines are also happy. They will support. You can charge the line for getting rid of this thing. Destruction of cargoes.
Okay, now coming to destination, there is another question, and I believe it's a very valid question. If actually I am the destination freight forwarder and I am giving nomination, my consignee is giving nomination, then still is the booking agent at the origin liable, or there is a liability of the destination agent? What happens in this case?
Only destination agent.
But why? Because for shipping line, the booking agent is the person to be caught. I don't have any privity of contract with the shipping line.
Sorry, whoever is the booking, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. Whoever is the booking agent for the line, and if that is the party with who there is also named appear in the bill of lading as shipper or consignee, then that party will be liable, not the other.
And between two forwarders, is any liability created? Like shipping line may hold the origin forwarder liable, but the origin agent, can he have recourse on the destination agent?
Yeah, so if one pays, effectively the law is if one pays the debts which he's not obliged to for another, then he's entitled to be reimbursed. So applying it over here, if one innocent freight forwarder ends up paying another one's debts under force, then he's entitled to be reimbursed.
Victoria, have you come across such cases?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to the point I was maybe making to begin with, that although a lot of these questions seem quite complicated and with slightly different angles, it all really comes back to the contractual chain and who is named where, and a lot of the times the action is going to be maybe arguably unfair, that, you know, the freight forwarder is getting penalized for something that's really not their fault at all. But you've just got to follow that contractual chain. The carrier's going to take action against you. You'll then turn around and take action against somebody else, and it will just flow through the chain till ultimately, hopefully, the responsible shipper will actually pay the funds that are due. But
Okay.
Anyone that's at destination that's near the abandoned cargo, they're there, aren't they? They're there on the spot. And it's probably easier to make their life difficult. But yeah, as Ashwin said, you know, you might have to put up with something, but then you'll turn around and make a claim against the person that contracted with you.
Yes, Arun, go ahead.
Sir, I think we should move on to Q&A because 15 minutes to be too short, and we have almost 47 as I can see. So, Priya, can you help us with that, please?
Yes, I'll just.
Giving questions right now.
Yeah, so we will
Go to next set of questions.
first we'll finish this session with the questions, and then we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, can you see the questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Can import be in forwarder's name mentioned in BL? Not understood, actually. If anybody has understood, means if the question is, can the freight forwarder be importer on record as is allowed in USA? Indian custom doesn't allow freight forwarder to be importer of record. Actual importer holding IEC code number needs to be the importer on record, if that is the question. Shailesh, if you understand this question differently, you can answer it.
No, same way as you answered, Shantanu, I think that's what it appears to be, and means can import be in the forwarder's name. I think you answered it correctly.
Then disposal of uncleared goods. Forwarder should be allowed to sell goods after 2 months if it is undelivered. Take proceedings. I think we have described the auction procedure. The first lien is of the carrier, and the system, as I have seen, it is the custodian who does, and there is a full committee of customs, custodian, and they decide a floor price. So I don't know how forwarder can take charge, except we have given a proposal of general order warehouse, where that warehouse takes the entire obligation. But if any panelist feels differently, that forwarder should have right to sell goods, please pitch in. Anybody with different view, you can share your view.
It's not allowed because only the customs can do the auction. So nobody else can, not even the custodian. It is, the auction is performed by the customs, with the custodian being the, servicing the customs. And the auctioneer in also they are normally appoint. But the responsibility and the authority is only with customs. So nobody else can do it.
Because abandoned goods become a government property. Because after 30 days they can confiscate. So even by confiscation it becomes a government property. So in either way it becomes a government property. It is no longer property of the shipper or consignee when it is abandoned or it is confiscated. And after 30 days it is liable to be confiscated.
The only thing what we can do as a trade body is to try to push the government to recognizing a association or a federation of associations to perform this task, which we can probably look at.
Shailesh, this is a point where people lose their jobs and face CBI inquiries. So why should we be, as an association, part of something which is eternally going to be subject to inquiries?
No,
There's a methodology.
Custom likes to handle auction because no matter what is done, there is a disgruntled party. Auction is a racket, and then they go and complain, and then people are subject to all sorts of inquiry. The government officers have lot of protections under the constitution, under their service rules, under the various acts, whereas we don't have any protection. So why would you put our neck? Yeah, go ahead, Arun.
Sir, I have a suggestion because there are a lot of suggestions in this question. So I think we should just stick to the question. Suggestions we can take offline, sir.
Fine, we will take suggestions offline. So reshipment should be allowed. It is allowed.
it is allowed.
Reshipment is allowed. And it is much easier than before. Earlier, it used to be adjudicated. Now there is a public notice of Mumbai Customs which lays down the procedure. If somebody has difficulty, Shailesh Bhatia is an expert, contact him. Along with circular or BCBA, contact BCBA. BCBA will be able to guide you. Okay, Arun, it's better you read out the questions because you will have advantage of already having read them.
No, sir. Actually, Priya is doing this. Priya, can you come
Priya do that because I have to read it online. So let Priya.
Yes, sir. So, reshipment of goods, if undelivered, cargo should be allowed to be reshipped without hassle.
Priya.
that is a suggestion. So let's move to the next question, please.
Next question. This is with respect to export shipment, which is back to origin due to non-compliance of destination country documentation. Can the shipper or exporter abandon the cargo with filing the BE after surrendering availed export benefit? Abandonment of a return cargo. And is the shipper or CHA responsible for shipping line charges at overseas destination? Seek an expert reply.
I think that has been answered. The last one has been answered. And I have not understood the Question, shipper, you can always abandon the cargo, but you will be liable to other laws of repatriation of money or give evidence of abandonment.
Shantanu, I guess in this, it is the shipper of the foreign country sending goods to India. Can he abandon? I read it that way.
No.
It's an export shipment which was sent from India to, let us say, USA. It was rejected over there and it came back to India. So now the Indian exporter who had sent, can he just abandon that cargo himself, his own goods? Can he abandon so that because he would have availed the export benefit in it?
No, he cannot abandon because there would be no payment made. Na? In case payment is not made, no export incentive is admissible. So the question is whether he got the payment or no. If he got the payment and he is still getting the goods back, yes, then he can probably, claim his incentives and abort the cargo.
Shailesh, this is a little more trickier if I have understood the question. He brings goods back to India, so there is a evidence that goods have come back. And then he doesn't want to bear cost of paying custom duty and all, and then abandon. So as far as the limited purpose of RBI rules is concerned, either get the money or if it is bad debt, then there are some rules for that. What he's saying is, I will bring back, but not clear.
No, Shantanu, I think the question is very clear. The cargo has come back. He's surrendering the export incentives which he has claimed. After doing all that, instead of clearing the goods, can he abandon? That's the limited question. So the answer over there would be yes, you can abandon after doing this, but you are yet liable for all the responsibilities which you have towards that cargo. So you are at liberty to abandon it, but the responsibilities and liabilities in terms of all the charges, you are yet going to be liable till date of abandonment.
And
the reason why they want to abandon is to try and avoid the charges, but you're liable for the charges anyway. So
even when you abandon till the date you abandon cargo, you are liable for all those charges in any case, right? So one, that is, you are liable for that. Two, the second part of this question, whether the shipper is liable for shipping line charges at destination where the goods went and it came back. Of course, they are liable because they entered into the contract of carriage with the carrier. They took cargo all the way, let's say, example, from here to the US, got rejected, it came back. Obviously, the charges to and fro as well as charges incurred in US are the liability of the shipper.
I think the next question is about the court case.
Yes. So the question is to Mr. Ashwin. Currently, the Supreme Court has ruled that in terms of port charges or warehouse charges, it is to be recovered from owner of cargo. Bills of lading being negotiable document, and if consignee has not obtained the original bill of lading, in that case, port authorities has to recover from shipper who is not in India and not making shipping line liable. Is this position is correct? If this position is correct?
Answer: yes.
I think court has already given a decision, isn't it?
Ashwin, yes is the only answer. Would you like to elaborate it a little?
Yes, is the answer. Basically, they can't go against the agent. They can't go against the receiver because as he correctly says, the receiver has not purchased the OPL, so he has no liability. So the only person they can go against is the shipper. Shipping line will not be responsible because under the words of the section where that agent had been defined as liability, there the line was not being considered as liable for it, only the agent was liable. And in the judgment at the end, they say that you can proceed against shipper, receiver, whoever else may be liable. So line won't be liable, you'll have to go against that foreign shipper. The question contains most of the answers.
Great. So the next question, it says, if we release the MBL showing the freight forwarder and mention in shipper column on behalf of or on account of, does it help if saying that we booked on behalf of the merchant?
On account of always creates problems, especially when there's a problem, everybody's running away from it. So it's not a very good practice to follow this. It makes it difficult to tell who is actually the shipper when you have two names over there.
No, but in any case, wouldn't it be, Ashwin, that, since if it's in my name and I've just said on account of XYZ, I am actually entering into the contract of carriage with the carrier. And therefore, I am yet going to be liable irrespective of whether I say for and on behalf of whoever. Because I've entered into that contract of carriage and therefore I will yet be liable irrespective of whether I say on account of or on behalf of or whatever.
But let's say there was a problem and that person is now come to chase Anand Seth, and Anand Seth wants to run away from his obligation to pay. Then he will say that I didn't enter it into my own name, I entered it on account of somebody else, so that person must be chased, and then there'll be both of them will be passing the blame to each other.
But isn't it that, when I'm getting into this and entering into such a contract, I know my own liabilities and I'm getting into that contract with full knowledge that I am going to be the responsible party, whether I show on account of or not is immaterial over there, right?
It is, but it's just, I think we've seen a lot of problems and difficulty in understanding how to find who is responsible when this phrase is there.
I think, if I can interrupt, I think you've kind of got to pick a team. You're either acting as a forwarding agent or you're not. So you can't, I don't think you can really be putting on a carrier's bill of lading on behalf of somebody else. No, you're holding yourself out as a carrier. You're getting increased earnings because you're operating in that capacity. And unfortunately, you'll need to accept the increased liability that comes with contracting in that manner. I don't think that's a get out of jail clause, but to try and be clever with the way in which you're phrasing things. I think, like Ashwin says, you're probably going to tie yourself up in knots, and I don't actually think it's correct to be doing that anyway. You want to be as clear as possible, so that everybody understands who the relevant parties are and there can be no misunderstanding.
So that's
I think let Ashwin answer further. I'm quite confused with this question, because apart from being a transport document, this is a document of title. So whether it makes any sense that a title document can be issued on behalf of somebody doing something. So at least to my knowledge, shipping lines are not issuing such bills of lading. If they are issuing, I am not aware.
No, but Shantanu, on such a case, sorry, before Ashwin answers, Shantanu, in such a case, you are already, the question is MBL. So that means I have already issued my own bill of lading. I have issued an actual negotiable document between shipper and consignee. I have just on the master bill of lading, which I have taken, and I'm using these terms very loosely, master BL and house BL, which are not the correct terms, but nevertheless, I'm using it loosely for understanding over here. In that, I am in addition showing on account of XYZ. That's what this question was. So Ashwin, please go ahead and answer.
It creates a lot of ambiguity, this on account of, there's no straight answer for it. Both the parties named in the shipper column is going to blame the other. One will say I acted as agent for somebody else, so I should not be liable for it, and vice versa. So,
and what is the consent of other party? Then you have to give consent of other party. Then you are saying on behalf. That party can turn away and say he has not acted on my behalf. He has acted in his own capacity. And in reality, are such bills of lading issued? I have doubt whether
I've seen quite a few, especially in agri trade and all. I've seen quite a few of these.
Arunji, do we have more time?
No, we don't have the time. I was just calling you to pull down this particular slide. Yeah. So probably all the other questions remain unanswered. We will probably form a team and
send the questions to the panelists and try to seek replies.
Yeah,
right.
There are more questions. I'll compile them and send it.
Arun, please share the question 2, discussion.
Yes, sir.
2. This is a more emotional issue than the previous one. In previous one, it is the consequential costs which are being discussed, and there is no criminality involved. Whereas we all have gone through situations where cargo is released at the destination, without original documents. Now there are a whole lot of issues. We have put some questions. What are the liabilities, financial protection, how insurance company can support, and whether taking nominations from overseas agents is risky, and what are the precautions. I think this will be even a larger issue than previous one. But starting with Victoria, will you set the ball rolling?
Yeah, sure. So, so one of I guess the first question is what liabilities does the MTO face? And generally speaking, if you've released the cargo without the bill of lading, then you're liable for the full value of the cargo. You're not able to limit your liability in any way. So you really don't want to be doing it. There's a line of questions about this issue, but I guess taking a step back, the key question is if the cargo has been released without a bill of lading, why was that done? Was it done intentionally? Were you put under pressure to do it? Have you been dealing with this shipper all the time? And he's like, oh, you just release it, fine. If you want to do that, absolutely, your call to do so. You would be recommended to get a letter of indemnity. It should be on a prescribed wording, ideally countersigned by a bank or by a guarantee. But fundamentally, however which way you do it, it's a commercial decision, and you're on your own if it goes wrong. And it's not something that is covered by insurance. If there has been an unintentional release of cargo, then that's a slightly different issue. Now we need to ask ourselves the question, who did it? Was it you, or was it one of your subcontractors, your sub-agents? So assuming that you're perfect and you don't make any mistakes and it's one of your agents that's done something wrong, then you will be liable yourself if you're the contractual party on the bill of lading that you've issued. But obviously you are going to then settle the claim and turn around and take recourse action against your agent, who hopefully you've sufficiently vetted and insured carries adequate liability insurance for this type of risk. If you've committed the release yourself, this is something that you may, or again, you're going to be responsible for it, even if it was done innocently. You may or may not be covered under your insurance, depending on who you have your insurance with and the terms. The key question that your insurer is going to want to know is how did this happen? Because you ought to have robust systems in place to minimize the chance of this happening in the first place. So they're going to really want to drill down on that. But you know, accidents happen, and that's what insurance is for. But fundamentally, if you do it, you're liable for the consequences, whether intentional, it was an intentional release or unintentional.
Victoria, see, I am the origin agent and I am the insured party, and you are my insurance company, is the situation I am giving. And my destination agent may have done an error, or he may have done deliberately. How will you help me to mitigate this situation? Because it is not of my doing. It's an independent, separate company. I have no means to ascertain whether he has done deliberately or he has done by mistake. And we will take the second dimension of nominated cargo separately, because it's already a complex issue. Second complexity we will deal separately. We will keep that on side. You assume that it's my customer, my shipper, and I have sent cargo to the destination agent who has delivered without BL, either intentionally or mistakenly. Then how will the insurance company support the origin forwarder who is insured with you?
Okay, so again, you've got to check your insurance and make sure that you're covered for the risk in the first place. Assuming that you are, then you're the customer. You're the one that the policy is to benefit. Your insurer will make sure that you're okay. We'll probably end up settling the claim, I would imagine, if it's quite black and white, but then they will take action against the agent and try and get a recovery. The best thing to do in those sorts of situations is to put the two sets of insurers together, excuse me, and then they can thrash it out between them.
Okay. Vishal, anything on this?
Sorry, I have a little bit more crooked mind. So when I've done a lot of these in this bulk cargo matters where people have misdelivered cargo without production of original bill of lading and these disputes arise. So yes, you are going to be liable for the C&F value of the containers in case of misdelivery. But there are defenses to this that very few people actually know about. Okay. First is, let's say the demand has come from the shipper or from the bank after say 2-3 months of the delivery of the goods. That's when normally it comes, okay, after the goods have already been delivered. Then what happens is, of course, you are liable for the value because of misdelivery, and you have to consult your underwriters for how to be handheld on this. But one of the defenses available is, why did they take 3 months time to make this demand for delivery, and damages are payable as though you failed to give the goods after 3 months. So therefore, you will do cargo value CNF minus the storage costs for this cargo minus container detention charges. And when you minus all these, eventually you will realize that because of how high these rates are in your own contract or booking note, there will be nothing left to actually pay to that original bill of lading holder who's claiming delivery. So you can eat up the entire claim by saying that these are the storage costs and detention costs that I would have incurred had I given you this delivery of cargo after 3 months. Now his answer to that will be, no, but you didn't actually keep the cargo for 3 months. You delivered it to somebody else within 1 week of discharge of this cargo. So why should you be given this subtraction from the claim amount? Your answer to that is no. The rule in contract law is that when you sue me for damages, you can't profit from it. You must be put into the same position that you would have been in as though I had performed the contract. And if I had performed the contract and you made a demand after 3 months after vessel discharging, then you must pay the costs of that. You can't only take the benefits without the downside. So in that process, you can effectively defend the entire claim for misdelivery of cargo.
Anand?
I completely agree with what they are saying, but I have one particular case which I want to, give to Ashwin and ask him what happens in a case like this. It's happened with me itself, where we shipped a cargo, the document went through the bank. Now there was a fraud at the receiving bank's end, whereby they took one bills of lading and gave it to the consignee. One out of the 3 originals, they took and gave to the consignee. They took a color Xerox of that and attached it along with the bank set in the bank. Okay. So the consignee came to my agent with an original bill of lading issued by us. My agent in good faith gave delivery against it. And the consignee did not pay. And ultimately, after whatever 2 or 3 months, the documents came back to the Indian bank. And the Indian exporter came after me and saying, here's my original set of documents. Please give me delivery or give me the value of these goods. Now, this was a clear fraud at some end, which end we are presuming it's the bank's end, because the original documents came back through the bank with one color Xerox of the bill of lading instead of the original. So what is my defense in a case like this?
You're not liable. Not liable because you have delivered it against an original bill of lading. A full stop. You are not concerned whether the documents under the LC were found to be acceptable, not acceptable, how it happened. If you are delivered against OBL, that's the end of it. Or even in good faith, if you thought that you were delivering against the OBL, that is also good enough.
So even if somebody would have actually given my agent over there a color Xerox of the bill of lading and he in good faith had delivered it, I'm yet not liable. That's what you're saying.
Correct. Because as long as it genuinely looks like the original bill of lading, that is good enough. Not liable.
Okay.
No, I think this is a straightforward case, isn't it, Ashwin? Because the delivery has been given against the original bill of lading. What happens between the bank and the shipper, I have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
I agree, Shantanu, you're very right. But you see, in normal parlance, when we are working, if the shipper is a client, he's going to put pressure on you. It's business at stake. You already have money due from the customer to you. I'm just giving a practical aspect to the whole thing. Therefore, I wanted a legal clarification. I did the same thing and I have not paid the claim. That's a different matter. Okay. Issue is for
could
everyone.
be a fraud in bank. It could be a fraud with the shipper's company also.
Could be. Could be.
I'd like to come in, Shantanu. I'll give a different perspective to this slightly. It was my own personal case. ODC movement going into a foreign country, UK. What we did was we did an express release. Though we have issued a house bill of lading, we've done an express release. Now, since it was ODC, the port of and it was a small port, one of the smaller ports of UK. So the port authority called up the consignee directly that, look here, your material is coming, you take it under the hook because it is ODC. The consignee placed his vehicle, took the delivery under hook, and they didn't approach my agent. The agent has not issued a delivery order. So this is a situation also which can come up. So I just thought I'll share it with all the viewers who are participating in today's webinar, that this express release also has its certain dimensions of risk. So it's always, though we all practice an express release, this dimension does come in, where an error omission can take place at destination.
Express release.
Yeah, because the shipping line had no reason to withhold the cargo. They have already got their express release instruction. Second dimension, which one needs to take care on in case of a misdelivery, we didn't talk about it, but it is quite prevalent in India, is filing of a criminal case. Now, there are instances in smaller locations in the country, when you are going to a small judicial magistrate, they go over there and they show CAD as cash against document, a cash against delivery instead of cash against document. And these are the instances which do come up. So another point of caution, which I would like to tell the viewers is, you need to be very careful about criminal charges being levied on you, which does happen and will happen in India, but you need to be vigilant of that, not take any, claim received from the shipper lightly, activate yourself and be ready, especially in cases where the stakes are big. Small stakes, maybe it doesn't happen, but larger stakes, the person who is wanting to pursue you for the claim, he is going to move every way, whichever possible he can. So this is another dimension. Claim is payable is no doubt, because it's your bill of lading. But there are different dimensions which do come up.
I think express bill of lading is one of the riskiest thing we do, and I have seen various articles from liability insurance companies, freight forwarders, lawyers. The best document, see, when bill of lading is not required, it is unfortunately shipping lines are pushing hard for a bill of lading and they charge extra money for seaway bill. Some of the bigger forwarders are able to negotiate and insist on it. Some of the smaller forwarders are not able to negotiate. $50 or $25 extra they charge for seaway bill for no rhyme or reason. I think that's where people again go to express release. Seaway bill is a much better solution than express bill of lading, because once you have given up the title, there is no recourse on shipping line you can have. Ashwin, will you like to enlighten on this issue?
No, good.
They say only 3% of the transactions in the world actually require a bill of lading. 97% can be carried out on a seaway bill or what is called a non-negotiable multimodal transport document. Multimodal transport document can be issued as negotiable or non-negotiable. So we can very well issue a non-negotiable multimodal transport document. And the destination, you have to give identity, establish identity and take. By express release, we are giving up every ability to have recourse on the shipping line for a correct delivery. Ashwin?
So could you elaborate on what is an express bill of lading? It's not a term known in law, that's why.
It's a colloquial term. What we do is we surrender bill of lading at the origin. There is nothing such as express BA. It's a big colloquialism.
So and so you surrender it at load port and you say issue DO to so and so. So
Yes.
then you have to check the identity of the named person on the DO and hand it over to him only. How do you know who is the DO recipient then?
Yes, you normally, when you do an express release, you say, please free release this cargo to consignee XYZ. You normally give those instructions when you surrender that bill of lading. You do that, yes.
You have to then check his identification at the discharge port of the company too.
Technically, yes, but it never happens that way because it goes as a free release in the system. So, places where a delivery order physically is not required and it's just given a release on the system, then, you really don't need to check any identity.
Okay, so then if there is a mechanism in place for satisfying, then it's fine. If there isn't, then you all will need to make sure that it goes to the right hands. Is what I mean, I can see there's a lot of questions coming for Victoria and for y'all and for me. What I was...
Any observations on express bill of lading, as we said, and CWA bill, some observations, some comments on it. The bill of lading getting surrendered at the origin, it's a worldwide practice. In fact, some of my US East Coast forwarders said that we will not accept it at all. Don't send cargo or don't hold us responsible because somebody else, there are gangs operating and shipping lines tip them and they take away the cargo. And there is nothing we can do. Means, typically from US East Coast, I have got this feedback. You have come across such cases or no? You are lucky. Okay, let's take up questions.
What I was proposing is subject to everybody else agreeing is we'll try and do as many questions as we can. For those that aren't available, Victoria, myself as well as you, I will go through it and then we'll prepare a little note or an audio note and then you trying answering all the remaining questions because it's no use for everybody. I'd like everybody's questions to be taken up and dealt with because they're not easy questions. And then we send that back through your email system to the audience so that they get the response to what the specific questions are.
Yeah, I think that is what we have proposed, that we will get back to that. So Priya, will you go ahead with the questions?
Yeah, for the second point of discussion, these are the three questions as of now, but there are a lot of comments which we've received, but this is the three questions. Should the bank, the first question is basically on the case Mr. Anand Seth had shared, where should the bank endorsement not be checked on the reverse of the bill of lading in the case? How does it work in other countries? I mean, in your case, you said that based on a photocopy. Was there a bank endorsement in that? Ms. Anand said.
Yeah, so in our case, it was not consigned to the bank. It was through the bank. Document was through the bank, but not consigned by the bank. And the law at that destination does not require the bank to endorse it at all. So therefore, the endorsement was just by the shipper who gives it over here, endorses it at the time of submitting to the bank, and the consignee over at the time of release. Bank endorsement is not required. It was just documents through bank, not consigned to bank.
And that's very common, means it's not something uncommon.
Okay. So the second question says, if the cargo is delivered without original bill of lading by agent at port of destination, whether forwarder in India is liable for criminal action under section 407 of IPC? Ashwin.
Usually no. So whenever there's a civil liability available, criminal will not be there for that. You will never see police interfering. So if you ever get a threat of a police thing for you, please make sure that you file some sort of a civil proceedings of any form and automatically the police backs out. So if that's a risk, and even over here, then forwarder India, yeah. I mean, but the forwarder, as long as he's the carrier of that bill of lading, then he's liable, be it as under criminal or under civil.
So my question, Ashwin, here is, if at all there is a fault, either deliberate or innocent, it is not by me or my servants or my employees. It is at the destination and it has happened in foreign country. It has not happened in India. The cause leading to this has not happened in India. So how
Correct.
can Indian police take
Correct.
cognizance of it?
Yeah, they're looking for, typically they're looking for reasons to reject jurisdiction. Their main excuse is it did happen within my police station limits, and this is not there. So that's your strongest point.
But police does take a lot of interest. Means our experience is police takes excessive interest, and year after year, means it's not once. Like even in some, I think a month back, we have a case of in Chennai happening in this manner, that somebody has made a police complaint.
Is there some recourse as for criminal action, Ashwin? That's the issue over here. I mean, civil action there is there some this thing whereby we can say that there is no criminality and therefore no criminal action arises?
You'll have to, there will be no criminal liability for the following reasons. One is because it's happening outside of police jurisdiction. Two, it is a civil matter, and to get the police off, you need to send civil notices, file a civil suit, automatically they'll back off because that is what causes you the maximum concern. And third is, it's not you who's done it, but it is somebody else who's done it, some agent or somebody at the end of the thing. So there will be no criminal liability for this.
So as long as I file some civil recovery against my agent overseas, I should not face any action. That's what you're trying to say.
Usually they back off the moment they see the civil thing.
But this is one of the commonest action people take. Means for us to file FIR is very hard, but this complaint gets filed very easily.
Correct. Because some of them they're influential businessmen in small towns. So
yeah, correct.
And or for the reason that they act like claim settlement agents, because they have been offered certain gratuities against a settlement. So that's why the extra attention they will put in. Well, anyway, that's off the book. That's not cannot be handled by law, but that's the basic premise due to which they do that.
No, see, they may not be acting as per law, but your remedy will come from the law.
From the law, yes. I guess what Shankar has said.
Legal, but your protection, your remedy will be from the law.
Yeah, and what Shankar has said is very important, but you need to strategize it and have a lawyer at your standby if you fear such an action which is to be initiated by your client. So it's always better to be pre-prepared rather than, react to the situation. That's the point which I wanted to convey to everybody.
Pre-prepared means what? Anticipatory bail or what?
Not that could be the worst case scenario, but you pre-prepare means you first explain your case to the lawyer, because when an action is initiated, then there is no time to speak too much. So you first brief your lawyer, file the civil case or file the notices, whatever you feel are relevant and appropriate at that juncture, and keep your lawyer at standby. That's the point which is very important.
So the next question is for Victoria, probably. For smaller forwarders who are not multimodal MTO, to cover their liability, is there any insurance coverage policy which normally MTO have? The insurance, I'm sure they can still take, but
yeah, that's the easiest question I've seen so far. So it's very similar. And if you get in touch with your insurance broker or you get in touch with me, I'll certainly try and help. But yes, there is something available. Because quite often an MTO is doing more than just moving cargo under their MTD anyway. So, the insurance is very similar if you're an MTO as a technicality or a slightly different type of forwarder using a different document of carriage.
So, but I think main concern is how to protect smaller forwarder, where probably the insurance companies may find it administratively difficult to have small customers.
It depends on the insurance company. If you're going to, I would say, an insurer that isn't specialized, one of the big names where they're writing all sorts of different classes of insurance and they're not particularly focused on logistics and marine, then you're probably going to find that they might not be so interested. But I wouldn't let the size of your organization get in the way. I think it's actually very good risk management practice.
Good, I think nice to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next question is, please advise, MTD terms and condition is still applicable whether it is original bill of lading or express or seaway bill, whichever is issued.
Actually, I didn't understand the question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure this all the terms of the bill of lading will still remain same whether it is an original BL or an express or a seaway BL. I think that is the only answer.
No, Priya, I think the gentleman is mixing all these three bills of lading. So as an MTO, he has to have issued an MTD. These are his back-to-back bills of lading, which he takes from the carrier, performing carrier. So I guess he's mixing these two together. The client is issued the MTD, and this is what is issued to him. So this needs to be separated.
Okay.
We can interpret question differently, but one thing I will say, we already discussed, there is no bill of lading such as express bill of lading. It is colloquialism for surrender at the origin.
Yeah.
Secondly, original bill of lading is a bill of lading, whether it is a multimodal transport document or it is a bill of lading. Original is something which is negotiable. Secondly, seaway bill is a waybill. The equivalent of seaway bill in multimodal transport is a non-negotiable multimodal transport, and it is allowed in law to issue a non-negotiable multimodal transport document or multimodal transport bill of lading. In fact, SCI never used to issue seaway bill and people used to complain about it. Whereas SCI position was, we are issuing a non-negotiable entity, it serves the same purpose. So people used to get stuck with a particular nomenclature, and when equivalent remedy was available, that was not being exercised. So probably let us get clear about the terms, and then maybe you can resend the question if we have not answered you.
Okay. So the next question is, it says in Brazil, it's not mandatory to present the OBL or even the HBL for obtaining delivery order. With this, how safe it is to deal with Brazil?
I'll take briefly at that. So yes, it is unsafe. I'm not aware about any such rule in Brazil, but if there was such a rule, it is unsafe because you remain exposed to a liability. You have in your bill of lading promised to deliver only against an original bill of lading. So this will be a problem if you're delivering over there.
Yeah, and I'd add to that as we've already discussed, if you're intentionally releasing without a bill, then it's a commercial decision. If you're not already aware, the legal costs, Brazil is very, very litigious. It's a very litigious environment, and you're arguably taking more of a risk doing it there than in certain other countries in the world. So I would be, do your research and be assured that you're comfortable with this practice if that's what you're doing.
But I am a bit surprised if it is so in Brazil, because then the banking system itself will collapse. There won't be any propriety in letter of credit and shipping against a letter of credit if you are able to take delivery without original BL. So very tough actually.
But it's correct.
Yeah, but then whole banking will collapse, isn't it?
But that law exists in Brazil. That's a fact.
Mm.
That's a fact. It exists in Brazil. As a matter of fact, it exists also in USA, where if it's a consigned directly to a company and not to a bank or to order, even in the US, the original bill of lading is not required to be surrendered for delivery. That's the law over there. So we need to be very careful when we are doing this. Actually, on that CWA bill point also, it's very important not to have CWA bills for USA, especially your master BLs, because otherwise it shows a free release in the system and anyone can go to the port and pick up that cargo. So Brazil,
for CWA bill, the shipping line is obliged to identify the company name.
what happens in USA, Shantanu, is because it's all electronic, the minute the manifest goes saying that it's a CWA bill, it shows as a free release. And if it's a MBL, it shows at release required. So only in those cases, the shipping line gets involved. In CWA bills of lading, shipping line really doesn't get involved, even though they are obliged to do it because the electronic manifest shows it in this manner. I've had cases where we've had a problem, and therefore for US shipments, we only take original bills of lading, the master bills of lading for ourselves, either courier it or surrender it later over here once we have taken possession of our house bill of lading, which we have issued over there. Normally, we just courier it because there are multiple, so courier cost is not much.
And the risk is disproportionately high.
So so the next question says, in case we are handling a DDU, I'm assuming it's DAP or something because DDU should not be applicable, and the shipper has informed to deliver the cargo to another consignee instead of the declared in bill of lading. Is that possible? And the destination agent delivers as per instruction from shipper, and the consignee mentioned on the BL will file legal case against the destination forwarder.
Yes. Yeah. The destination agent cannot deliver just on instructions of the shipper when there's a bill of lading issued, right? Because the transfer of title takes place based on that bill of lading to the consignee. So if he's going to deliver to somebody else, he will have to take no objection from the original consignee on the bill of lading before he does something like this. And if he does deliver in this manner, then he's liable to that consignee.
I think two more comments on it. I think here there is a mix-up between the contractual terms of delivery and the title. The title issue remains the same. The commercial terms of contract of carriage can be up to the port, it can be up to the particular hinterland destination or to the factory. These two things are different. Second issue, DDU is still a valid term. Incoterms do not expire. You can go for any version of Incoterms and they are valid. So DDU doesn't expire. DAP, maybe one version, we can go to an earlier version and we have to refer to that version.
Okay.
Only one last part is file legal case against the destination forwarder. So it has to be against the person whoever has issued the bill of lading.
So Ashwin, it's something like this. You know what happens? People actually catch the nearest agent. So the destination agent is what they file a case on. It's reverse when it comes to India. And most often you see the consignee over here or somebody filing a case on me because I'm the destination agent over here. Whereas you are right, legally the case doesn't lie on me. It lies on the issuer of the bill of lading, who could be a foreign party as well. But that's what normally people do, is file it on you.
Ashwin, let me give a twist. I am the destination agent and my origin agent gives me wrong instruction. Does that exonerate me? The title document itself shows, say, X as the consignee. Just because my origin agent tells me something and the shipper tells something, who am I to forfeit the right of the actual destination consignee or the importer mentioned Y on the bill of lading? Just because two people in the chain give me wrong instruction doesn't mean I am obliged to do that.
If you're not the carrier under the house bill of lading or the master bill of lading, then you have no liability for cargo misdelivery. Okay. that any misdelivery will go only against whoever is issued the house bill of lading. Then all you have to do is you have to follow the instructions of the person who you've contracted with and deliver to that person. You are not supposed to apply your mind and deliver it to somebody who you think is the correct person.
But there is a title document over there, and a person will come with that title document to me that I am the owner of the goods. Just because origin tells me something, how can I act to the contrary?
Shantanu, I'd like to come in. Here, you have to see whether the original title has been surrendered. First thing. So if it is surrendered, then how is it been delivered to another person? Is there an endorsement from the shipper or the named consignee on the master bill of, on the house bill of lading? Those things will need to be examined. You just cannot say it is right or wrong. You need to see whether the original BL is surrendered, and if the second consignee comes, even if it was, let's say, delivered to consignee number 2, original BL is to number 1. If the original title is not in his hands, on what basis can he claim ownership of the goods? Question.
No, the origin agent is asking to deliver to someone else.
No, fair enough. But where is the title of the goods? Who is holding the title?
I'm not happy doing such things at all, even if my origin agent or the exporter tells me something. I'm not at all happy. If I was the destination agent, I will disregard it. I will say, have it changed it and have the bill of lading endorsed in the name of person to whom I have to deliver the cargo.
Exactly.
Absolutely. That's the point which I'm trying to say, that we have to see what does the title have on it. Is the title in possession of the second consignee or still in the possession of the first consignee?
So if
It's in possession,
this is not a debatable issue at all. The twist that has been given, it is a DDU. Since it is a DDU, I am delivering at the door of the person, and he doesn't have to come and take delivery from the custodian.
But he yet has to surrender the bill of lading to give delivery, Shantanu. That's the basic premise.
So that's why.
So where is the title?
But Anand, that's what I said. There is a mix-up between contractual terms of delivery, that is transport of carriage or contract of affreightment, and the title. These two things have to be looked separately.
And normally, maybe in DDU delivery, the bills of lading would be issued like Seaway BL actually. I mean, it may not be an original BL.
Not necessarily, Priya. There are many cases where it's an original bill of lading. You take surrender of the original and only then deliver. Where we see umpteen number of cases like this, which we handle outbound as well as inbound, where we actually take surrender of the bill of lading and only then process the DDU.
And even if we do the custom clearance as USA allows someone else to be the importer on record, still the cargo is not delivered until the bill of lading is released. So title and the ancillary services have to be looked separately. Title is a title.
Let's move on.
Yeah. So the next question for Victoria, will insurance company be liable to pay any claim for handing over the cargo without surrendering the bill of lading?
Yeah, I think I maybe answered that earlier, but first of all, you need to check your insurance because every policy is different. So it depends on what coverage you've got in place. If you are covered for errors and omissions, then ordinarily you would expect to be covered if either you have done it by accident or your agent has done it erroneously. But if you have intentionally released it, or as we were just saying, maybe in certain parts of the world, there's a practice on certain trains, there's a practice where you just don't bother getting an original, then you've intentionally done it and that risk isn't covered.
I think, can I answer this little differently, and then Victoria, you can correct me. According to me, stay there, Arun, stay there. Go to the same question, stay there. According to me, insurance company is not liable to pay if cargo is delivered without surrendering the BL. But if there is an error or omission, the insured can have recourse under errors and omission.
Correct. Yeah. So if you've got cover for this, that's the section of your, in any cargo liability policy, there's different sections of covers, and errors and omissions is one of them. So if you do have cover under the insurance that you have, that's where you'll find it. But what you'll also, obviously, with all of these things, you've always got to read your coverage in the context of all the other terms and conditions. So one is going to be, as I mentioned earlier, you've got to have systems and controls in place to prevent this from happening by accident. So that's something that people are going to look at. And I know some insurers sometimes phrase the cover that they give in this respect as almost discretionary, because they just don't want to open the floodgates of getting claims for what is fundamentally a commercial decision. And I mean, it goes on. Loads of people, you know, as you'll know better than I, release cargo, and frankly, probably 99% of the times it all runs smoothly and it's not a problem. But yeah, it's a commercial risk fundamentally.
And in most cases, Victoria, correct me if I am wrong, the limit for errors and omission or discretionary insurance is much lower than the actual insured amount.
Yeah, typically it is. Yeah.
Like typically, if my insurance cover was $1 million or $2 million, the errors and omission or discretionary insurance would be 50,000 or 100,000.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more, you know, again, depends what you've negotiated, but that tends to be.
It's a fraction of it. It's not just little bit lower, it's a fraction.
Yeah, about like a quarter.
Okay. One last question under this, and then over to Arunji for the third point. Is there any way or remedy to catch hold of the consignee who absconds in the situation if cargo was released without originals by agent of MTO?
Depends on the case, really. Depends where it is. I mean, certainly, if you can, you'll try and find them and take legal action. But because it's fraudulent if they've well, again, it depends on how you've released the cargo, whether you did it intentionally or it depends on the context of the release. But yeah, if somebody's been fraudulent in some way, then certainly there's a way to bring them to account. But if you're in that field of behaving in that way, quite often they're sort of a couple of steps ahead, and you know, you need to track them down, and that can be difficult.
I have a view on this. First is it depends whether there's in addition to what Ms. Simpson says, is you may have a letter of indemnity. So that's one way by which you can chase the consignee. Number two, ideally the consignee should be a factory owner or somebody with some sort of permanent establishment, which means that he can't just disappear. If he's just a trader who's taken it, then yes, you have a problem. So then, as Ms. Simpson says, it depends upon who the consignee is and what those circumstances are. But you must chase them separately. Also, the agent also will be liable if he misdelivers the cargo. But remember, both of these will end up being normal actions which you'll have to fight in court because you don't have any other shortcut remedy. So those are slower and longer processes.
Ashwin, staying at the same point, supposing I have a genuine error and I deliver cargo without bill of lading to the consignee, does the consignee still has the obligation to give the original bill of lading? Or that obligation is expunged once he gets cargo in his factory?
So if he's given an LOI without an original bill of lading, the LOI says that he will surrender the original bill of lading after some time. If he somehow taken out the cargo without OBL, without LOI, then he will continue to be liable for either for the OBL or for the return of the goods or for the value of the same.
No, I'm saying a mistake happens in my office and we give delivery without original BL, maybe under pressure that I am like typically it had happened with our case that my taxi is down there and my bag is down and I will just you give DO and I will give it to you. And he ran away. Luckily, we got another consignment in Delhi and we withheld the Delhi consignment and we could get the bill of lading. But a person comes under pressure, that person comes to you quite frequently, regularly, and he says that I have left it in the bag. So in that case, is the consignee, have I any recourse on the consignee? Is the question.
You're not giving up any rights. You can still continue to chase them.
Okay.
I'm done with the questions, but just one point.
Slide.
One point to Ashwin. Ashwin, in one of the seminars I had attended, where you were the speaker with the indemnity bond, you'd mentioned that we should probably be covering 200% of the value. But do customers really? I mean,
yeah, I remember meeting you, Priya, that time in Delhi. Yeah, last year I think. So it's a very important issue about LOIs for that are issued in lieu of the original bill of lading. So one of them is you put a value on it and put a value which is either at least 110, which is commonly used in insurance, or 200%, which is more commonly used in this. So you get the invoice copy and ask for 200% of that value, LOU.
great. Over to Arunji.
Any reason for double markup, Ashwin?
Sometimes you get additional claims. You can get a further claim that with this I could have done this thing. There'll be an interest liability or a manufacturing loss, so to cover you for all those worst case scenarios.
Including the legal expenses. If we have to pay Ashwin, we have to cover that.
300% LOU.
No, a lot of companies take 300% value, not 200 also, 300. And it's basically, as what Ashwin correctly said, interest costs, other liabilities for loss of profit, loss of manufacturing, legal costs, everything. So a lot of people take 300%.
Shall we go to the last topic of the day?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, this is an area where we all have very little experience because EBL is a relatively new thing. So maybe I will start with Anand, Shailesh, and then go to the insurance company and the lawyer. So Anand, please set the ball rolling for e-bill of lading.
I think the first question being...
Remove the screen because the questions are very small. There are only 2 questions.
I think the first question is, if so, under is e-bill of lading a valid document, and if so, under which convention or law? I think, as I understand this question, one thing is whatever convention under which I'm issuing my bill of lading, whether it is an MTD, whether it is Hague Whiskey, whether it is Hamburg rules, Rotterdam rules, Hague rules, whatever, the convention remains the same. That doesn't change because it's a hard copy of a bill of lading or an electronic bill of lading which is issued. So as far as, a document is concerned, the convention yet remains the same. Will insurance cover taken by MTO cover cyber fraud when it comes to EBL? It's a question which I'll even scratch my head because it's so new that we really don't know what it is. I think Victoria would be the best person to answer that. But, saying that, I would only say that an electronic bill of lading is so new that unless and until other related activities are also electronic, just to have only a bill of lading which is electronic and everything else which is not electronic, I don't think it helps the supply chain in any manner. That's my view only.
I think like General Clauses Act, I think Ashwin correct us, there is a IT Act which is like an umbrella act where any manual signature can be replaced by digital signature, any manual document or manual record also can be substituted by a digital record. So there is a convention that is being done by UNCITRAL in Working Group 4 on e-commerce, where it is going to be umbrella law without changing any substantive laws. Substantive laws like Custom Act, Contract Act, Negotiable Instrument Act. Without amending them, the laws will be e-commerce enabled. There is an international convention which is not signed, but most countries have enabling laws. I think, Ashwin, you can throw light on this before we go to Victoria for the insurance part of it.
I'm afraid I have zero experience on electronic bills of lading. I've been hearing about it for the last 30 years in textbooks, seminars, conferences, but I've never seen a dispute or worked on this thing. So I'll have a little bit only to contribute on this. I know a little bit about the IT Act, and basically it's just lays down of relevance to us a procedure by which electronic documents can be proved. So essentially you file an affidavit saying that I confirm that my computer is working, the software is working, it's been printed out, what is printed out is the same as what was on the screen, the server is fine, there's no virus. So there's a standard format affidavit which you file, and that same equally will apply to electronic bills of lading. But how it actually works and the risks, I think Ms. Simpson may have some more experience than all of us do.
See, the operative part is different. What I'm saying is basically it is an enabling law which allows digital documents in place of paper and manually signed documents. This is the enabling law. Like General Clauses Act says that instead of thumb impression, you can have signature. Is that right? Or we have to probe it further?
No, it's pretty simple. It is correct what you're saying. It's the one that allowed you to do transactions, enter into contracts over PDF or over email and so on and so forth. Because earlier what was considered to be primary evidence was only a physical paper format, and now that has since changed. So you're correct about what you're saying. But in the specific context of electronic bills of lading and safety, I think somebody else will know a lot more than I do.
There is a very good question Arun has, but I will keep it at last. Yesterday we had debate on it. Victoria, any suggestions on e-commerce, digital or electronic bill of lading and cyber crime?
Yeah, sort of as Ashwin said, been hearing about these electronic bills for ages, and I don't think it's really, certainly from my perspective, until relatively recently that I've seen any interest from freight forwarders getting involved in this. It seemed, I don't know who's been using it up until now, but I certainly haven't really come across it. I think it sounds really exciting. I think it sounds like a move in the right direction. In terms of whether they will be acceptable by law, I'm not a lawyer, and obviously even if I were, the position's likely to be different in different countries, but my understanding is that essentially in many countries, the law of contract would ask for certain things like consideration and agreement, and the parties getting involved in an agreement need to be of sound mind, that sort of thing. It doesn't necessarily say that the contract needs to be in paper form. So all of those other requirements are being satisfied by using an electronic bill of lading. And my understanding is that when you subscribe to any of these systems, you have to sign a user agreement and sign up to the bylaws of that particular bill of lading that says that basically you're doing it freely and you accept that whatever responsibilities and liabilities there may be, you won't challenge later on down the track on the grounds that actually it's not in paper format. So even if perhaps in certain areas the law's a little bit behind because there haven't been enough case studies, there haven't been enough, we don't have enough experience, my common sense tells me that anything that comes in the future has got to be on the side of the user of the bill of lading. Anyone that's trying to challenge it all of a sudden, I didn't realize it wasn't going to be in paper format or whatever argument they're putting up, I don't think it's gonna hold. So I think it's pretty exciting. and I certainly know some of my clients are exploring it, starting to do their trials of using certain systems. But as you said, also, and I'm guilty of doing this myself, because it's electronic, you suddenly think it's different, but actually the Hague-Visby rules and the conventions that are contained within the Bill of Lading are exactly the same. The bill looks the same. I think the only difference is maybe on the top it says this is electronic or something like that, but essentially it's the same instrument. So yeah, I think it's exciting times. To address the question about cyber fraud, I'd like to think, and I'm sure there's a 16-year-old out there that's going to have different ideas, but I'd like to think that if you're going this e-bill of lading route and you're selecting a company with this blockchain technology, probably minimizing a lot of your risk or reducing your risk. I'd like to think that we're now going to reduce delays. All of a sudden there won't be lost, we haven't lost the bill of lading. We haven't got the situation where the bill of lading didn't arrive on time. There's going to be quite an audit trail of things. So, and by buying into that kind of technology, obviously the providers of these systems are going to have very robust security in place. It's not to say things can't be penetrated, but from my understanding, the e-bills that are based on the blockchain technology apparently is a lot more secure and less susceptible to penetration by hackers than those that aren't. But in terms of your coverage, as a freight forwarder, most cyber insurance is a different class of business. It's actually a non-marine class of business. So again, I can't speak for other insurers. I can only answer this generally from my own perspective, but I would say that you wouldn't be covered for any cyber fraud or cyber exposure that you might encounter by using one of these systems. That's a different risk that would need to be picked up by a different type of policy.
I think let me ask this question a little differently. I think obviously the technology companies and people who are promoting e-bill of lading are in touch with insurance companies like you, because unless there is some consent from you, nobody is going to adopt it. Mm-hmm. They insist, at least in discussions we had, that it's more secure than paper. And in every respect, they try to give an evidence. So my question is, if there is any fraud in this system or any mistake in this system, would you treat this as a cyber crime, or would you treat it as a normal fraud as happens in course of business?
It depends on what's gone wrong, but the way in which liability cover tends to respond is if whatever's gone wrong could have happened anyway if it was a paper document and it hasn't been exacerbated by virtue of the fact that it's an EBL, then your cover would be the same. As you were saying, the bill is to all intents and purposes exactly the same. The terms and conditions on the reverse are exactly the same. If there's loss or damage to cargo, you can limit liability in the same way. If you've made an error, there's going to be a big audit trail. So they are two separate things, but the way in which insurers tend to phrase how they would respond to claims arising from EBLs is if the loss would have arisen, notwithstanding the fact, had it been a paper document, then we'll respond in the same way.
Anyone else has a view on this? Shailesh, your son has a digital platform, so you must have studied a lot.
No, but fortunately or unfortunately, they are not on the EBL platform yet. Okay. And I guess it's going to take a lot of time for it to percolate down to a forwarder. So we are going to be for quite some time in the manual mode in the foreseeable future. But what I see in the future, it's just a question as much as any of the viewers would be having, is that at one side, the liner will be issuing a EBL, and the other side, you would be issuing a manual bill of lading. How this whole system, in case of any mistakes, errors, omissions, which laws will apply? Of course, again, the answer I have in my mind is that from the shipping side, it would be whatever the laws are of whether it's issued in Hamburg, Hague, Visby, or Hamburg rules, whichever laws will remain. But the fine part, like today, you are having people filing criminal cases in case of a misdelivery. Next, it won't be a criminal in the normal CRPC. It would probably be in your Information Technology Act. So certain things will change. The premise will remain the same. See, the business is not going to change. The way the things will happen, the dimensions will change. That's about it. And I have no answer to that. I just feel that the whole story is going to restart all over again, because you will have different case laws once this comes into picture.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think I think it's really exciting. I think it's an exciting development, and I'm quite keen to see how things unfold. One of the other points that I would add, if anyone's exploring this and this is from an insurance perspective, obviously before you do anything, always check that your insurers are going to entertain whichever e-bill you're looking at. Generally speaking, and again, can't speak for every insurer on the planet, but generally speaking, there are only really 6 providers that are approved by insurers. So you really want to make sure whoever you're talking to is one of the 6, I would suggest. And if not, you might come into difficulties.
Arun, I think you have one question on EBL, which we discussed yesterday. Since you are passionate, I think it's your turn to ask this question.
Right. So I'll take this opportunity. I'll not let this pass. To the best of my understanding, any electronic document or any document signed electronically is only valid when it is in electronic form. That is my understanding. Pardon me if I'm wrong. This is the question actually. So once you print that on a hard copy, does it still remain valid, or what is the validity of the signature there?
I can contribute on this. It is valid. For it to be proved in court, you have to issue a certificate under section 65B of the Evidence Act. It's a fairly standard format certificate. What I mentioned earlier, you have to file that affidavit saying that the printout is a true copy of what is there on the system. You don't have a virus in your system. Your computers have been properly maintained. You have tallied the two and it looks the same. It's a standard format 3-paragraph affidavit which you need to file, and then it will be equally admissible as though it was originally done always in paper.
I think he has a little different question. It's good. I'm happy to have this clarification. His question is little different. What he's saying is the original EBL is what is digital with digital signature. Now what we bring out is a print or an image of it, which is in paper form. And then whether somebody manually signs it, stamps it, it is all superfluous. The actual bill of lading is the digital part of it. So you can say this is a certificate of that, but this is not the EBL. Is that right, or that's your question?
Exactly. So the question, I'll just put it in simple form.
So the EBL is the EBL. It's not a printout of the EBL.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
what is negotiated is this piece of paper.
No, the point is, if it's an electronic bill of lading, everything is electronic. You don't really require hard copies at all. So therefore, there is no need to print this bill of lading. Even the banking system has got to take it electronically. It's got to transfer it electronically, and it's got to be released electronically at the other end. So the whole thing on blockchain will have to work electronically. If you are just printing it, as Ashwin correctly said, if you're just printing it, you're printing it as, let's say, as a copy, as a proof, and you're giving an affidavit saying that this is in its true form as it is appearing electronically somewhere.
It's
But
like
Anand, that's the very point. What you are doing right now, you're not in blockchain. So what you are really negotiating is that piece of paper. So that's a very fine question. It actually will test law, because if there is any fraud or anything which goes wrong, this is going to be a very moot question, that what does it fall under? It's a piece of paper only.
But therefore, Sailesh, right in the beginning, I said, electronic bill of lading, unless completely you electronic
Blockchain.
your
Only blockchain.
blockchain comes in, it's actually valueless.
Yeah.
What is that electronic bill of lading of value unless the whole blockchain system is there, right?
Yeah. If you're going to start printing
point
these
which Arun is
documents, it
saying.
kind of defeats the object. I would
Sorry?
say. If you're printing the bills, you're kind of defeating the object. The whole point is to
I have seen this even in
paperless. I think customs am I right in thinking that customs is sometimes an issue where you might need it in paper rather than digital form?
No.
No. Okay.
I mean, a lot of countries don't require any physical paper to be filed with customs anymore. Okay. There are some countries where you do require it, but a lot of countries you don't require it at all. So, even, and over there also just a copy is needed. The original is never needed, right? In any customs.
I have seen this even in the courts in UK also. If all court papers, and they are large papers, are put onto electronic form. So everybody has their fancy iPads and they're scrolling through documents. Everybody has it. But on the side, everybody has these giant size suitcases. They pull out the hard files and they're reading from that only. Everybody has a comfort of this.
I guess we'll all get used to it in a different form going forward.
But Vishal, Ashwin, you had some comment. I think you got interrupted.
No, nothing else. Nothing else.
But Arun's question is still not suitably answered.
No, I think what we are giving is not EBL. It is a image of the EBL. And if it is EBL, then it has to be electronic. So I would say this is remote printing instead of shipping line printing on there. And it has been happening for a long time. And funnily enough, it is a neutral airway bill, and we as IATA Air Cargo agents are signing and stamping it. So it's a big joke.
Till the next case, I guess, to decide what is the reality of this, or what is the liability in case anything goes wrong.
So what are the panel's views, those in logistics? What are your thoughts? Are you going for it, or you're not interested, or what are your feelings about taking the EBL?
There is no choice, because if world is going digital, we rather be ahead in the learning curve than be a trailer and laggard. And logistics industry, though is made of SME, we have been always quick in assimilation of technology. Because we serve big customers and we have to rise to their standards to serve them. So we have always assimilated technology by the quickest move of a customer. Slower customer may remain behind, but we have to align to the fastest customer.
Yeah.
So
any questions before we close?
Yeah. So
Yes.
we will move to the questions, sir.
So I have about 3 questions for the point 3, but then there are a lot of people who are requesting also to take 1 or 2 questions from the previous 2 points. But on the e-bill of lading, the first question is, in a negotiable EBL, how does the transfer of discharge, how does it work? And paper BL, it is stamped and endorsed, but how in EBL? In the paper BL, it is stamped, but how is it done? How is it?
I don't know if anyone can answer it. I think we're all waiting maybe for someone to jump in. I'm not totally sure. I think the way it works in terms of transferring or endorsing or anything like that is it's an audit trail that's all online. So if you want to change anything, each user, each participant would log in, and they would be able to, I guess, propose their change, and then the counterparty would then be able to agree it, and then there would be a complete audit trail of these changes. There isn't a requirement for it to be stamped. It wouldn't be. It would be electronically signed all the way along the chain by the relevant parties.
No, in a blockchain, when you have a bill of lading, as we understood blockchain, once it is in the blockchain, your discharge is against the token which you release, which you input into that blockchain and pass it on to the next person. The next person again gets into the blockchain, has a token number which he is getting. Based on that token, he is discharging it. So the consignee will discharge it in that manner. Then it will pass on to, let's say, the forwarder or the carrier in the case, and the carrier will then finally say that, okay, it's been discharged by everybody, and therefore I'm releasing it. That's how blockchain is understood, and that's how it would be done, I would assume.
What he's asking is negotiable BL and endorsement. He is very specific, so he is referring to say high C sale or sale of document as against sale of goods. I believe the same process as Anand described will be followed, is my understanding. Same process as Anand, there will be one more step. One party will be endorsing in favor of another party. So just because it is digital, it won't change. Is EBL?
If in EBL, is PDF signature valid or only proper DSC is required?
DSC.
It is DSC.
DSC required if it's an electronic. It's the PDF signature is not valid.
Yes, scan signature is not valid. The next question says EBL is a valid document and can be, this was just a comment somebody had mentioned, is that EBL is a valid document and can be treated as primary evidence under Evidence Act. You only have to produce a certificate. I think Ashwin had already mentioned this. This is not a question. This is just a comment somebody had said, and they've already used it in a court of Delhi, court of law in Delhi. These are general questions. These are general questions from earlier topics. Arunji, should I take them or?
If President allows, we can take them.
I think we can pick a couple of them if the
we have 15 minutes.
We can pick a couple of them.
Yeah, just 2-3 of them. One of the question says that when the cargo is delivered by destination agent without presentation of original house bill of lading, agent comes back saying he has an undertaking from consignee to protect him in case of any claim from the shipper. How far the load port agent who issued the original house bill of lading is protected by such undertaking from consignee to destination agent?
Well, my immediate reaction before Ashwin answers, the destination agent has no business without taking permission from the shipper and the origin agent to release it against undertaking. But let Ashwin answer it.
So the letter of indemnity has been issued in this case, but it is not addressed to the carrier. It is addressed to some discharge port agent or to somebody else. Now, that is a bad letter of indemnity because there is no liability upon the discharge port agent. The liability for misdelivery only is upon the carrier, and the LOI must also be addressed to the carrier. So the carrier will not be able to use the benefits of this LOI. So he will not be protected. When you say load port agent, I assume that is the one who is the carrier.
No, they are talking about a house bill of lading, which means a shipping line, the main liner BL was issued showing the destination agent as the consignee. There's a master bill of lading. The Norman words used is that master bill of lading will have the origin forwarder and the destination forwarder as a shipper and consignee. And then the house bill of lading was issued. So wasn't he already authorized the consignee at the destination? I mean, the freight forwarder, authorized carrier.
And does anybody else have anything different to answer on this?
No, I think just what you have said, it doesn't matter whether my bill of lading, I am the contracting carrier, and on my bill of lading, my destination agent has no business to release cargo without my permission and my exporters or shippers' permission. he can't take indemnity to himself, because as Ashwin explained categorically, the original liability is on the person issuing the bill of lading. So the indemnity also should be to the person issuing the bill of lading. The job of destination agent is a master and servant job. He has to go by my instructions, and without that he has no independent authority to do anything. Just because he is consigning the liner bill of lading doesn't give him any right. He gets access, and in all transactions you have umbrella mutual agency agreement in which performance of verification of bill of lading is an explicit part of an agency agreement.
So this is
So
something
it doesn't make a difference if the bill of lading is of so-called shipping line or forwarder. It is the contract of carriage and the title that matters.
So the person, I'm sure, is coming from the background where a lot of fraud in the name of credit to the consignee is happening in various countries, including India. A BRO credit, for that matter, in that kind of an angle.
Yes.
In
So,
this case, it is an admission that he has done it willfully. So the claim goes on the destination agent. He is accepting it.
He is worse off in that case. In fact, he is admitting the collusion.
so, okay, moving on to the next question. As per the MTO BL clause 23, shipper can take action against misdelivery within 9 months of the delivery. Then how to calculate claim amount?
This claim amount will be the CNF value of the cargo.
So probably, Ashwin, he is considering the point which you made of 9 months detention damage deduction. Probably he is picking that cue from what you said.
No. Shailesh, law of limitation under COXA is 12 months. The suit has to be filed within 12 months.
Yes,
and
not a claim.
Under Multimodal Transport Act, it is 9 months, so that we have right of recourse. You get 3 months to file that. So it is a law that the suit has to be filed in 9 months.
No,
but it has nothing to do with the quantification of the claim.
No, what he is talking about, first, Shantanu, amplify that just a mere giving a claim or filing a registered AD letter is not filing a proper claim. It has to be in the court of law. Anything short of that, anything short of a civil suit is not to be considered as a claim. The second part is he is asking about how to calculate the claim amount. So he is taking definitely the cue from Ashwin's statement. I would suggest to him 9 months detention damage of that container cargo to be considered for settlement of claim. Unless you all have different views. This is the way I am seeing it.
I agree with Shailesh that he has taken Shantanu.
This can be possible.
No, Shantanu, I think I agree with Shailesh for a minute that because Ashwin said to us earlier that, you have to reduce he actually said we are liable to minus the costs, okay, incurred by us towards storage, detention, demurrage, everything, and that we minus from the claim of the cargo, you minus that amount from the cargo value. So the question is, if he comes to us after 9 months, I agree with Shailesh, you can actually minus 9 months of the storage and this thing, and therefore actually it will be a reverse. He might have to pay you instead of you having to pay him.
I would have one more question to Shankar on this same point, that what is to be calculated as 9 months? The date of his giving you a letter or the date of filing of the suit? Which would be the date of consideration?
9
when
months.
He filed a claim on you, which would be the date to be considered? The letter?
The delivery date until suit date.
Until suit date. So not the letter date, when he has just sent you a letter.
But letter, I don't know about multimodal, but under Carriage of Goods by Sea Act, there also additionally has to be a letter immediately upon discovery of any cargo damage, for cargo damage claims within 3 days and within 1 day. Separately, there has to be a letter. But for answer your question, it is delivery date to suit date.
To suit date. So yeah, yes. Most of them don't file the suit, they just give a letter. So that becomes a very wide period.
There's actually one exception to this thing. I just deviate slightly. The rule says within 12 months you have to file suit, or in this within 9 months you have to file suit. So somebody went to consumer court, and and consumer court has a time bar of 2 years. So somebody went to consumer court after, say, for example, 1.5 years, and he argued, he was faced with the defense saying that, but you are belated. He said, no, that is only a bar on suit. What is filed in consumer court is called a complaint. It's not a suit. So therefore, it doesn't come on my way, and that argument was upheld, and it was found not to be time barred. So if you ever face a problem when any of your claims is time barred, it's more for the cargo side, then one way of bypassing this thing is go to consumer court and file it against us.
Now, consumer courts don't entertain commercial cases. That amendment has come some 7-8 years back.
But that ambiguity.
They were accepting commercial cases. Now, the law has been made stronger. In fact, I had a commercial case in consumer court and they make mess out of it. They pass most outrageous orders, and Supreme Court refuses to interfere in it. In fact, Bombay Regional Consumer Court was much more reasonable. The national was very arbitrary. And now they have made an amendment. They don't take commercial cases. It is only you have to be a consumer, and they have defined the consumer. And I think I am happy with that, because they can give the most unreasonable orders because they don't consider other laws also as applicable. They may not honor COXA also. They will just say if there is a service deficiency, that is it. What is the contributory service deficiency? That is it.
Yeah, the decision-making process is very superficial. There's no legal mind going into it.
I think we can just quickly take the last question because we are just running out of time.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's one question which I'll take it from Mr. Sushil Gupta. Any cargo delivered by destination agent by mistake, and now if consignee wanted to give it back the cargo, my question, can freight forwarder in India whose booking party can be held liable for non-BL delivery case?
So if the cargo is being given back by the consignee, as I understand, was misdelivered to the consignee is returning the cargo back to the destination where he took delivery from, then why would there be a case of, delivery without a BL, right? Because the cargo has come back. Isn't that what this person is saying?
I guess maybe would it depend on the type of cargo? So if it's something perishable, then by the time you've got it back, maybe it's not in a good condition. But essentially, they're rectifying the problem if the consignees return the cargo.
The shipper can also claim that the goods have been switched because it was in the position of the consignee. So that abundant precaution and care will need to be taken.
Yeah.
It all depends on the commodity and what is the, But the shipper can also take the position that these goods have been switched. These are not my goods.
Mm-hmm.
That and perishable both remain as a problem, yes.
Priya, if you have a question, you can quickly take one more.
Yeah. If forwarder placed the booking and direct BL has been released, shipping line sent notice to booking party after 2 years.
Hold on. Just hold on. I don't think we have answered this completely. I think let's factor it is not perishable. Let's factor that it is reasonably possible to establish that these are the very same goods. And in a lot of cases, it is possible for metals, by mill certificate, by machinery. It's almost impossible to replace a machine by something else. So if it is possible to establish these are very same goods, then I believe the cause doesn't exist. Does anybody have a different view? The cause for which there is a claim doesn't exist. The consignee which has taken delivery has given it back to you.
Yeah, well, technically there is no loss if you've got the cargo back. I guess the consignee could argue that there's been an undue delay, but then normally within the terms of a bill of lading, there's a promise that you know, you can't really, you don't guarantee to deliver the goods within or by a certain period of time. So you could possibly defend it on those grounds. I guess like with all these things, it depends on how long it takes for the consignee to return the goods. It's 2 days later, it's very different than getting the cargo 2 years later.
I will give it a twist in this case. I will take Shankar's first statement. So if the shipper wants back the goods, he will have to suffer the storage cost, whether it was actual or otherwise, and pay good those costs of 2 years and then claim back the cargo. I would give it a twist in this.
I will apologize to Mr. Manjunath because we have just run out of time, and we'll probably take this offline. And Priya, with the permission of the President, we would like to propose a word of thanks and before we close.
Yeah, would Mr. Shantanu like to sum up before I do the?
No, I think it was an excellent session, and I belong to school which always feels that we can run out of material, and I wanted some additional questions to be standby. And Arun was confident that no, we will have enough questions coming in. So I must thank the participants for taking such a lot of interest, and I can see more than 100 questions and lot of chat that is happening. And after 2.5 hours, still we have 196 participants. So which is a big number. So I think it is very encouraging, and I am sure even Victoria and Ashwin will be very happy that they have a nice audience which is very active, not just sitting idling, but asking several questions. So this encourages us to have more such programs and such a interactive and panel kind of format. Yes, you can get the slides. Somebody is wanting to get slides. I think share the slides with all the registered people.
May I also offer this is from my capability, I'll try and send a written answer to all the questions that have come, and then it'll be a simple small Word document. You can share it because I feel whoever has asked a question must be entitled to some answer. So I've been able to copy the question and answer. The chat, if somebody could send to me, then I'll try and do that to those also, to the extent that I can understand the questions, because of sometimes it's not clear.
Yes.
It's a big job.
Wonderful gesture. We appreciate it. It's a wonderful gesture. Thanks.
So I will be compiling all the question and answers which I've received now during the online session, and there were about 30 odd questions which we'd received before. There were proper some case studies people had really wanted us to cover, but due to paucity of time, we've not been able to cover up each and every question. I'll compile them and send it to both Victoria and Ashwin, and they can help us with the solution, which will be sent to all participants. A proper presentation would be sent, a Q&A will be sent along with the video recording. So with this, we are, at AMTOI, we want to ensure that all events start on time and end on time. So thank you so much. I mean, it was a wonderful session. We are all overwhelmed right now. I mean, the amount of knowledge we've gained, I mean, it'll take time to digest all of that. And when I read all those questions, it's going to pop up again. But then it was a fantastic session with the people like Ashwin and Victoria. I mean, taking care of each and every point which was taken up. It was just fantastic. Thank you so much, Victoria, for your time. Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you, Mr. Shantanu, Mr. Anand, Mr. Shailesh, for the wonderful time and a lovely session. And a lot of people have asked for Ashwin's contact details, though he has already shared it. But Ashwin, AMTOI needs a cut on every recommendation you're making. I'm okay.
Good conversation.
Yeah, you've pasted your details without our permission. Our cut needs to be taken care, please. Just on a lighter note, and thank you so much. And I guess we can.
My closing remark is Victoria and Ashwin, we look forward to having you with us for many such sessions.
Absolutely. Really, really good. Thank you. It's a really good experience, and it's good to hear the different views, and I'm definitely leaving wiser for the experience. So thank you very much for organising.
Both Victoria and I wish that the questions were a bit easier. Thank you. Wonderful. Wish everybody business success ahead.
Great.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye to everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, all the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you have to end the YouTube first.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to figure that out. I'm still playing.
On the top itself, it will say, right?
So, Victoria, how was it for you now?
Yeah, it was good. I was like, I was a bit worried to begin with. I'm quite glad that I don't know if it's because I don't know Zoom, how to work Zoom enough. I couldn't see any of the participants, and that was
No, the participants won't be visible.
No, I know, but I think Shanika said he could see, or I thought he said that. Anyway, so I thought, oh, maybe he can see.
No, the number.
I was just looking at the number. Ah, okay.
Number and
yeah, I'm really glad I didn't see anyone because
you can actually see a list of participants on the right hand side. If you click on the participants list, and then it shows how many people are there.
How many people?
Yeah. So there's still quite a few people. There's still 86.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
no, it's really good. It's really interesting. I was a bit worried also how everyone would
whoever wants contact
communicate without talking over each other. And
we will forward.
Sorry. Priya was saying something.
Yeah, a lot of people have asked for contact details of Ashwin and Victoria. We will send that. Please don't worry. We will be sending that. We're not asking for any commission. That was just a.
No, I know.
Thank you so much, Victoria.
That's really good. Okay, I'm going to log off now, though. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Should we close?
Yes. So I'm ending it.
Yep, ended.